right, Lindsay, what's in your lens today?
We're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. So MTG has spent years building her brand as one of Donald Trump's loudest allies. But lately, she's breaking away from him, from MAGA and from the Republican Party itself. Now, let me be clear. I don't agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene on much of anything. This is the same congresswoman who built her career trafficking in conspiracy theories and hate. But here's the thing. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. Take her recent fights with the Trump world, when the former president's team threatened her over supporting a bill to release the Epstein files. Greene didn't blink. Instead, she told the New York Times recently in an interview that her response to the White House is, quote, "You didn't get me elected. I do not work for you. I work for my district." That's not the voice of someone content to play water carrier for Trump. And it doesn't stop there. She's blasted Trump for bombing Iran's nuclear facilities, flipping on Ukraine, and even called what's happening in Gaza a, quote, genocide. Language you're more likely to hear from a progressive Democrat than a MAGA Republican. She's also taken shots at AI expansion, defense and aid to Israel, and the same GOP good old boys club she says are trying to sideline her. Now, these aren't small cracks. They're full-on breaks with Trump's agenda and with the party line. Of course, Greene isn't suddenly becoming a centrist hero. She's still the self-described Christian nationalist who pushed QAnon, but shifts are real. They raise the question, why now? Well, here's some context. Greene is up for re-election in November 2026. And if you look at the numbers, Trump's policies are not the winning lottery ticket they once were to some people. She knows that. The cost of living is up, healthcare, energy bills. Those are all issues that voters actually care about. And Greene is savvy enough to realize that clinging to Trump's greatest hits isn't going to cut it in a midterm year where Republicans need more than culture wars. They need more than headlines. She's positioning herself as somewhat of an independent, unbought, and unpredictable, which, let's be real, is a convenient rebrand when you're staring down a tough midterm cycle. So what's the bottom line? Marjorie Taylor Greene is staking out her own lane, even if it means burning bridges with Trump and the Republican establishment. I don't trust her motives, but I can spot a political calculation when I see one. And sometimes, even when the messenger is a broken clock, the message deserves attention. Because if MTG is breaking from MAGA, that tells us something bigger. The Trump machine isn't as ironclad as it once seemed. Now, whether she's doing it out of conviction or pure self-preservation, only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, the party that once treated Trump's word as gospel is finally starting to question the sermon.
I think I disagree, though, with your analysis. I don't think she's breaking away from MAGA necessarily. She is dissenting from Trump. It's certainly not, in my view, for political convenience. It is much politically easier to, yes, sir, Mr. Trump, everything. I think she is a person of principles. You may disagree with a lot of her principles, but in areas where she thinks the Trump administration has gone awry from the principles she ran on, like Thomas Massie, she is willing to criticize him politely. She's not, turning on Trump as a human being, but she disagrees with some of the foreign policy on Iran.
Well, she told the New York Times they're trying to sideline her. She disagrees with the Epstein thing. So she's being more aggressive in her tone. This is a recent New York Times interview, and she's like, the good old boys club. I think that's direct call out to President Trump. So it's more than just, I disagree with you about Epstein. I think you're in the wrong.
Well, I think she's frustrated, but it's from sincere conviction on her part. I mean, we've interviewed her on, I guess you weren't, it was Niall the day that she did come on Rising, maybe like 2 months ago or something.
Okay.
And we had a great conversation with her, and Niall, just like you, disagrees with her and pressed her on a tweet she had that he thought was offensive, which was perfectly good question to pose to her, but she really didn't like the Iran decision and some others. So I respect that she's an independent thinker like Massie, and I don't think it's political calculation. I think this is making her reelection harder. To going against Trump makes it harder in a primary because the voters aren't paying attention to the nuances of it, which is not a knock on them. They have lives. They got to do their jobs. Paying as much attention to politics as we do is because we're paid to do it. It is our job. People trying to keep up with the details of policy to the extent we do, it's insane to ask them to do it in their free time when they're working people. So they just see, she's turned on Trump. I like her less. Maybe I'm not going to show up and vote for her. It's a bad calculation. It's one you have to do if you really disagree with Trump and you're principled about it, the way Rand Paul has picked some of these fights and others.
I just think
doesn't make their
if
life
she's
easier. Trust me.
Well, I think if she's specifically told the New York Times after President Trump and his team said that anybody who basically signs on with Massey's push forward to release more details about the Epstein file, he used some wording trying to deter people from doing it in the Republican Party. And she was like, you don't run me, basically, to the New York Times. My constituents do. So she's saying I'm representing the people that are on the ground. So she knows that Trump's policies, and that's just one example, I named the rest in my lens, are against what the people of her city feel. And she's like, how could I go home to the state of Georgia and say all these things that I've done, but you guys are telling me that food is too expensive, the economy is still not great, and our president is over here delaying information that you guys are asking for about the Epstein files. Even if her base was MAGA and highly interested in it, they want more information, release the Treasury documents, and not to even go into that deep dive of Epstein, but there's multiple things that she's breaking with the party on. So it's almost like, what is the party? Because as I read out these things, calling the genocide in Gaza, these are all have been progressive stance. I mean, AOC has been saying these things for 2 years now. So the fact that she's aligned with AOC, it's kind of like maybe that's a political tool that we're seeing used in the same way that we see the rise of Mamdani in New York, is because people actually want to hear a different policy that is the exact opposite of President Trump and want him to do things totally opposite than he's doing, which is why I always go back to the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of his current presidency. I mean, we are in September and people don't feel much of a change, and he's, not done anything too significant to people besides bring costs up.
I also saw her tweet yesterday. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I am not suicidal. I'm one of the happiest, healthiest people you will meet. I have full faith in God and Jesus Christ. With that said, if something happens to me, I ask you all to find out which foreign government or powerful people would take heinous actions to stop the information from coming out. The people understand what I'm saying. And Ted Cruz quote tweeted it and said, why do crazy people keep thinking the Jews are trying to kill them? So they're having some disagreements there.
So now she's just going to be called crazy and move.
She's saying that the foreign government, I guess Ted Cruz took that to be Israel, is trying to silence her. I do think I'm very critical of what the Israeli government is doing. I do think it can be taken too far in people thinking that, everyone trying to get me is Israel. There are serious people who think Israel killed Charlie Kirk, which is a ludicrous idea to me. That said, I am critical of Israel, and they do wield influence over our government, or they try through AIPAC and others try to influence people. So it's just messy and complicated. But I don't. When you start saying I'm not suicidal, someone's trying to kill me, I think you do sound like a crazy person.
She's scared for her life and also asking for the Epstein file. And then there's also there's also a conspiracy theory that perhaps Epstein, or maybe not conspiracy, wrong word. There's also a theory that Epstein may or may not have been working with a foreign government, which people may or may not consider to be Israel. So that's like an endless conversation about this.
Right. Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
I'm kind of on the same page with you, with your radar. So let's talk about it. So Democrats are frustrated, and not quietly. The party's donor class is openly questioning whether leadership even has a pulse. After losing the White House and Senate and failing to win back the House, they say the party lacks both direction and a message that sticks. One donor put it bluntly in conversation with The Hill, saying, quote, "We still haven't been able to find our feet, and no one is excited about anything. But I think a lot of people are realizing that if we do nothing, we cede control to Trump, and enough is enough." That's the thesis Democrats can't ignore. Love for the party isn't what's keeping the lights on. It's fear of Donald Trump, now in his second term. That fear is tangible. Donors pointed to a, quote, escalating threat of freedom of speech as a reason they started writing checks again. For some, it was the decision to pull Jimmy Kimmel off the air after his comments about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. For others, it was Trump's immigration crackdown, or even his bizarre statement linking Tylenol almost definitively to autism. As one donor said, quote, "It gets worse every day." But don't mistake fear for loyalty. Another California donor didn't mince words, describing the Democratic Party as, quote, incompetent, arrogant, insular, and tone deaf. The numbers definitely back up that Trump fatigue, though. The Republican National Committee is sitting on $84 million, and the Democrats just $15 million. So they have some work to do. And while some individuals like John Morgan, who's a prominent injury lawyer, tell The Hill they're still cutting the checks, he's also drawn sharp boundaries, saying, quote, "I will only give to a Democrat if they are not identified as a democratic socialist." He went on to say, quote, "The idea of handing a pile of cash to people who spend like drunken sailors is a bad idea." But here's the paradox. While the party brand is battered, a Quinnipiac poll shows only 30% of Americans view Democrats favorably right now. That's actually the lowest rating since 2008. Democratic voters themselves are actually fired up. According to a CNN SSRS poll, 72% of Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters are, quote, extremely motivated to vote ahead of these midterms coming up in 2026, compared to 50% of Republicans and Republican-leaning voters. Why? Because Trump is the great equalizer. No matter how fractured or disillusioned Democrats feel about their own party, Trump is such a polarizing figure that he unifies them. Democrats don't need to be in love with their party to show up. They just need to be clear-eyed about who's sitting in the Oval Office. So here's the suggested path forward. Democrats can fight over ideology in 2028, when the Trump era finally ends and a real debate over the party's soul can take center stage. But in 2026, the mission is way simpler. Unity is not optional. Call it a temporary truce. Progressives and centrists don't have to agree on everything, but they do have to agree on one thing: stopping Trump's grip on Congress. If Democrats want to win, they'll need less navel-gazing, more coalition building, and a message that goes beyond "we're not Trump." Because fear might open wallets, but hope is actually what gets people to the polls.
I mean, you're right that pathological dislike of Donald Trump is the thing that unites the Democratic Party. Of course, Trump himself won't be on the ballot in the midterms or again on the presidential election ballot.
If he can have anything to do with it, he's going to try.
I mean, I actually don't think Democrats will have much trouble working up, maybe not exactly the same level of fury toward J.D. Vance or whoever it is, probably J.D. Vance. But I think
it'll be a little bit less, honestly.
Maybe it'll be less.
He seems more reasonable in a debate setting, even.
Having a common enemy will not be their problem. Their problem is, you're right, that there's a substantial progressive faction or further left faction, and then a substantial, it's really two parties. I mean, AOC has said this. It's crazy that she and whoever, the most moderate senator is from the Democratic Party, that they share a party. But they do share a party, and that they need a candidate that picks a direction. And I think
Republicans don't need that, right? You said Trump just picks, and he's maybe the anomaly, but he just picks what he thinks works. But he doesn't align with traditional conservative values. We talk about that all the time, and how MAGA calls him on some of those things, and then older Republicans call him on other things, and he's like, I'm not doing either.
The dynamic in the Republican Party is different because it's just Trump is in charge, and then you're right that there's the more NatCon, Steve Bannon, populist faction. There's more like libertarian tech people like Elon Musk, but Trump is just Trump, and you're competing for him to agree with you on issue by issue, to agree with your faction issue by issue. That's how it works on the Republican side. The Democratic side does not have that phenomenon. There's not some leader they're looking to persuade to be more progressive or less progressive. Rather, they are competing to have a leader of the progressive faction, someone like Bernie Sanders or AOC or whoever, win the nomination, or on the more moderate side, someone like Josh Shapiro or I don't know who else, Jared Polis, and then you have people like Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris who I think are quite progressive, but progressives hate them, and they're not really centrist either, and I don't know. They kind of transcend those categories, but not in ways that actually help them. And it's a mess on the Democratic side.
My best advice, as it is a mess, is to bump all that. The midterms are coming up, and there's enough that Trump is doing wrong, since that is the galvanizing thing, to say, hey, let's talk about this. Your Medicaid might go away. Check out the big, beautiful bill. Look at how the immigration is going, just making people scared in your community that are not criminals. There's so many things they can look to say, okay, maybe Americans don't feel this way. And there are a lot of conservative voices or people who have aligned with Trump in the past, like Joe Rogan, speaking up about some of the things that he's doing around immigration, or Megyn Kelly saying, if we go into Chicago, that doesn't feel like something that as much as I like President Trump, I don't think is a good thing. So there's policies and this criticism. Marjorie Taylor Greene, we talked about yesterday, so many things. Epstein, she just disagrees across the board for the most part lately. So there's so many things that Democrats can just point to say, we'll do something different, but don't just only stop there and say, we're only Trump. They have to first unify, just start with saying, cool, we support Mamdani. Just say that. And because it's just like we are supporting somebody.
Well, that's such easy disarray to do when it's because Mamdani's just running to be mayor of New York City. And similarly with the midterms, the congressional races, you need to, the candidate in Kansas is different than the candidate in California. Fine. But when time comes to have a national...
But time is not here right now.
That's when they're going to be in for some trouble, because I think if the progressives get don't get their way again, that's 3 in a row, I think they're going to be really unhappy. They're going to say, we keep losing because you don't let our candidate be the candidate. Now, I don't know that I think Bernie, who had some crossover appeal, actually probably would have performed well in 2016. I'm less clear about that in the more recent elections. In 2016, I do plausibly think he would have won. But they have that narrative, and they could just stay home, and they could tank the whole nomination or the whole candidacy of the.
Yeah, I haven't followed up. Obviously, I'm not embedded within the Democratic Party to know what the real high-level conversations are. I read the New York Times and find out that they're trying to find their own Joe Rogan and nonsense like that. And my best advice as somebody who thinks that, there is a big L that happened in 2024 and it's time to move forward, is to just unify right now. Because obviously what they're yelling and screaming with their silence is that they need more time to organize and come up with what the next iteration of this party looks like. Because I don't know that the centrist Democrat is really going to work anymore. Somebody who's trying to just be nice to everybody or going up there campaigning saying something totally different than how they campaigned locally or governed locally. So that's also going to be a problem. But while they hash that out amongst themselves and come up with all their crazy solutions to spend millions of dollars, just support the candidates that are locally, just talk about all the things that Trump's doing wrong, and also just lay out a couple policies that maybe the party can agree on, because there are enough things like, okay, we want to make sure people have medical coverage, right? Like the extension of affordable. I mean, we're going to talk about it today, whether it happens, whether the government shuts down. So I think there's very simple ways to communicate with your base without saying, okay, the whole party's direction looks like this for 2028.
Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Lots to discuss. So there's a sad irony in watching the federal government come to a grinding halt, not because of some unresolvable crisis, but because politics turned into a circus. So earlier this month, a shutdown wasn't inevitable, but President Donald Trump practically locked the door and threw away the key earlier this week on Monday night when he shared an AI deepfake video mocking his main negotiating partners, Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. In the deepfake video, Trump shared Schumer sneers that, quote, nobody likes Democrats anymore because of, quote, all of our woke trans bleep, before falsely claiming Democrats want to give undocumented immigrants health care because the party needs, quote, new voters. Meanwhile, a silent Jeffries stands there in a sombrero and a handlebar mustache. Now, it's safe to say the video appears to be a reference to the misleading GOP claim that Democrats were threatening to shut down the government unless an agreement can be reached to fund health care for all undocumented people. But here's the truth. Undocumented immigrants are not eligible for most federally backed health care. Democrats aren't fighting for that. They're pushing to preserve Affordable Care Act subsidies that are about to expire, benefits that only apply to citizens and, quote, lawfully present immigrants. Republicans have been falsely spinning this into a debate about free health care for the undocumented. Jeffries clapped back on X with a statement that read, quote, bigotry will get you nowhere. Cancel the cuts, lower the costs, save health care. We are not backing down. Later, he turned the tables with a photo of Trump alongside Jeffrey Epstein and captioned simply, this is real. Schumer, never one to mince words, fired his own shot at the president, saying, quote, if you think your shutdown is a joke, it just proves what we know. You can't negotiate, you can only throw tantrums. The bitter stalemate over billions in ACA subsidies has now led to the first government funding lapse of Trump's second administration. And like every shutdown, it's really a game of chicken to see who blinks first and who takes the blame. Now, normally the side demanding concessions shoulders all the backlash, but this time, Republicans may be boxed in. A Strength in Numbers Verisight poll found that 34% of Americans would blame Republicans in Congress for a shutdown, compared to 23% who would blame Democrats. Another would blame 34% both sides equally. And even if the shutdown happened because Democrats refused to vote for a GOP bill that excluded restoring health care funding, the numbers barely shifted, 35% pointing the finger at Republicans, while only 24% blamed Democrats. That's because health care is a political landmine for Trump. His administration's Medicaid cuts are deeply unpopular, and voters haven't forgotten. So while the shutdown may be Trump's attempt at leverage, it's already backfiring. Because at the end of the day, Americans don't see this as a battle over immigration. They see it as another excuse for politicians to play games with their health care. And when the lights go out in Washington, it's not the politicians who suffer. It's the people who sent them there. Trump thought he could score political points with the deep fake, but in the end, the only thing fake here is the idea that voters will forget who pushed us into this mess.
Well, both parties are responsible for pushing us into this mess. I think it's a terrible system that every 6 months we have to have this last-minute race to reauthorize the same hideous amount of extravagant government funding that currently exists, that Republicans make only a half-hearted effort to keep in check. Now, they are trying to keep it in check here in terms of these healthcare subsidies that have disguised the true cost and true pain of the Obamacare program, which is unpopular. And, Democrats want to, continue having unchecked or unlimited subsidization or funding.
I mean, that argument can go any way because well, that's untrue. And also, I think with the big, beautiful bill, that their whole argument is moot because of how much they raised the deficit with that. So it's like they're not actually fiscal conservatives. And we understand that from how this year went, right? So we talked about how we agree with Congress and their lack of action. And so some of the things that they're saying don't match. And, people who would back me up would be Senator Josh Hawley. I know you don't love him, but he is a Republican. And he's like, look, we can't cut Rhino, Tino, whatever you want to call him, Taco. He still said that we cannot cut Medicaid for this many people without having pushback. And so here we are. It's not, even if you think this was a strategy, like we talk about all the time, most times it falls on the party that is trying to hold everything up to get something usually erroneous or obnoxious in there. But because the big, beautiful bill just passed, and it's the same people that perhaps may be affected by losing access to medical care, and they're trying to extend subsidies when we were able to extend tax cuts for folks and cut Medicaid and medical access for thousands, I think that is a valid point. And I don't think Chuck Schumer could go back to his constituents, or anybody for that matter as a Democrat, and say, okay, not only did we lose the election, we have no game plan, and we're also going to let healthcare go, our most winning issue. They have to stand on business right now, and I don't think that it's a good idea to shut the government down. I actually think it's a failure for everyone.
Tell that to the Democrats.
But I think it's a problem that when they sent the president a proposal, instead of meeting earlier this month when it was like 30 days away, he said, oh, that proposal was trash. I'm not even meeting. You're not serious. That's a terrible tact for the great negotiator. I thought he was the best negotiator in the world. He's sitting there negotiating with Putin, right? So why can't he negotiate with the Democrats? It's not that serious. He should be able to call them to the table. Why are you making that face? And have a conversation about their proposals. Some of his proposals are obnoxious, even to his own friend Elon Musk. And guess what? They've proved they can be friends again at Charlie Kirk's memorial. So he should figure out how to talk to Democrats, right? It's not that hard. You are the president of the United States. That's your job.
And the Democrats will cave and will end the shutdown.
Or the Republicans will agree that health care and the Affordable Care Act subsidies were an essential part of the fabric of our country ever since Obama put them in, and they've been very helpful, and they will move forward in the way the Democrats want to proceed and allow them to have one winning issue in these 9 months, since they have dropped the ball on all the winning issues that they have, including immigration, including the economy. And then
immigration is a winning issue for Democrats?
No, health care is a winning issue, so let them have this one. And I'm saying Republicans will continue to drop the ball on the winning issues they have, which is immigration, continuing to go into local cities when they're unwanted, and the economy, continuing that people are broke. And so let Republicans just shoot themselves in the foot over this, but Democrats can move forward with
most people agree
put ACA subsidies
that
in place.
The government is poorly running our healthcare system, and that we don't want healthcare benefits to go to illegal immigrants and paying for transgender surgeries or whatever other things the Republicans are going to talk about. That's popular. I'm sorry that Democrats don't understand.
Yeah, the subsidies being extended are for lawful migrants, meaning people have full paperwork and they work here under the law. That's literally what the subsidies that they're trying to extend. So this whole argument is just phony baloney. That's what I'm trying to tell people. Like, they're trying to conflate every single thing. Like, the argument for the big, beautiful bill was the undocumented migrants.
I'm not for the big, beautiful
No, I'm saying that's
against it.
No, the argument for people in there about why they were cutting health care and whom they were cutting health care for was migrants. And take that argument. But for the ACA subsidies is a totally different thing
than any other nation on earth. So it's not a lack of paying. It's not a lack of money being spent on it. Something else has gone wrong. We've talked about it a little bit with the drug prices earlier. Something else is wrong. It's not lack of money. If it was just the more money you spent, the better your healthcare services and coverage would be. We'd be set for life, baby, because we spend a lot.
So diagnose us
not
then.
The money.
What's the problem?
I don't know. Smarter people than me are going to have to figure it out. But it's not the lack of money. I suspect the disguising of the prices by having an insurance and subsidization system whereby the actual healthcare providers, doctors, hospitals, drug companies, the people providing the medical service, can upcharge us because we don't pay for it directly. They're basically upcharging the federal government. because the federal government is covering it, and then we're paying just a fee or a copay or paying for our health insurance.
Right.
And that process disguises the true price and allows Pfizer and hospitals and doctors.
Well, wouldn't it? This is when
that's the reform that is
and this
needed.
is when government works best. If Trump can take his Pfizer plan and connect with Democrats who've made health care and Obamacare their entire being for the most part, and work together to figure out what a realistic solution that appeases both parties are. This was great. No, I'm saying if they can just come together and figure out how more people can be covered as opposed to going to the hospital with no health insurance and never paying that bill.
Obamacare exacerbated that.
But if
problem
they can work together, address that statement.
requirement.
If they can work together, wouldn't we be better off? You hate that it's not working. I hate that it's not working. If they can work together, perhaps we can come up with a solution.
Well, perhaps. I mean, they could work together to make the system worse. I mean, it's not them working together is no guarantee things will.
But them not working together also hasn't worked for decades, so we're at a standstill.
Time for Lindsey's Lens.
Your favorite segment of the day.
Segment of the day. What's in your lens today?
Bad Bunny, the guy I know you know. So
No
stop
idea.
pretending like you don't know. So
Never heard of her. Go ahead.
The NFL thought it was just announcing a halftime show, but the moment Bad Bunny was revealed as the 2026 Super Bowl performer, conservative outrage exploded. And that says more about America than it does about music. So Bad Bunny isn't just another pop star. Born Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio, he's a Puerto Rican artist who refuses to assimilate to what power structures demand. He sings in Spanish, he critiques the Trump administration, he defies gender roles, and openly advocates for immigrant communities, all while dominating the global charts. In less than a decade, he's become one of the biggest superstars in the world, rivaling Taylor Swift, Drake, and The Weeknd. The difference, he does it in a language that America often tries to silence. And silence is exactly what Trump world wants. Since they can't cancel his performance outright, they're threatening to weaponize ICE. Corey Lewandowski, an advisor at the Department of Homeland Security, recently said on The Benny Show, quote, "There is nowhere that you can provide safe haven to people in this country illegally, not the Super Bowl and nowhere else." He went on to say, quote, "We will find you, we will apprehend you, and we will put you in a detention facility, and we will deport you." Think about that. A Super Bowl halftime show meant to unite millions is being turned into a staging ground for fear. This isn't the first time Bad Bunny has worried about ICE targeting his fans. Earlier this year, he told ID Magazine that he skipped touring the continental U.S. out of concern that Latinos could be vulnerable to raids. That's not paranoia, that's reality. Trump's rhetoric has emboldened people to complain when someone speaks Spanish in public, to sling anti-immigrant slurs, to treat whole communities as a threat. We've seen this before. After Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico in 2017, the U.S. response was slow and dismissive. You'll remember the mayor of Puerto Rico's capital, San Juan, described then-President Donald Trump's visit to the hurricane-hit island as, quote, insulting after he threw paper towels into a crowd at a relief center. Then at a Trump rally last year, a conservative comedian even called Puerto Rico, quote, a floating island of garbage. Bad Bunny didn't clap back with insults. Instead, he posted a stunning tribute to the island, its beauty, its people, its dignity. That's how he fights back, with love, pride, and art. So when critics call him anti-ICE or say he hates America, what they really mean is that he refuses to shrink himself or his culture to make them comfortable. He's proud of his heritage. He carries it onto the biggest stages in the world. Bad Bunny himself put it best when he announced the Super Bowl news. "What I'm feeling," quote, "goes beyond myself. It's for those who came before me and ran countless yards so I could come in and score a touchdown. This is for my people, my culture, our history." And that's the point. This halftime show isn't just about entertainment. It's a declaration. It's a love letter to Puerto Rico, to Latinos across the Americas, and to Latinos born right here in the United States. Because you are American. It's a reminder that you belong here, that you deserve to thrive without being constantly questioned or attacked or criminalized simply because of the way you look or the language you speak. And yet the reality is brutal. Last month, the Supreme Court's conservative majority cleared the way for ICE to profile millions of Spanish speakers in Los Angeles, lifting a restraining order that had barred federal agents from stopping people solely because of their race, their language, their job, or even just where they live. So when Bad Bunny steps onto that Super Bowl stage, it won't be just about music. It'll be a resistance in real time, a performance in the face of policies and prejudice designed to erase Latino identity. And it will also be proof that despite these relentless attacks, millions of Americans are standing beside you, fighting on the right side of history, refusing to let fear define who gets to belong. As podcast host Janice Torres put it, quote, Bad Bunny's career can be summarized in one line. Success does not require you to make yourself palatable to people with no taste buds. So get some taste buds, Robbie, and learn who Bad Bunny is, because he's not only one of the best-selling artists of our generation, he just is that amazing. Spanish, English, whatever, his songs are fantastic.
I will escuchen to some Bad Bunny, I suppose. All right, I took a couple notes.
Oh, you took out your notepad.
As I said, my brain is not operating at full capacity this
Okay.
morning. So you referenced the Puerto Rico floating a pile of garbage. That was a comedian making a joke.
So was Jimmy Kimmel.
Puerto Ricans
So
were
was Jimmy
not
Kimmel.
offended by it.
Is Jimmy Kimmel a comedian making a joke that all conservatives were outraged about?
What Kimmel said was inaccurate, and
Is the Puerto Rico a floating island of
that
garbage?
was
Is that
obviously
accurate?
a joke, whereas what Kimmel said was premised on a wrong
No, you can't.
statement.
You can't dissect
about
jokes.
someone who
if
had,
we're leaving
about a
jokes as
specific
jokes,
person who had
he
just
didn't
been
say Charlie
murdered.
Kirk's name. No, he didn't. He didn't even mention his name.
I don't
that
think
monologue.
it's-
He was talking about President Trump.
A little broad.
And he was talking about the
racial
killer
humor.
of-
You know, when they say to me, "Oh, you like a spicy meatball?" Like, I'm not offended by that, so we can do that. It's not the same as.
What does that have to
Because
do?
I'm Italian.
Okay, got it.
We do a little bit of like,
Got it.
oh, Irish, you must love some potato. Like, it's just whatever. It's the way it goes. I don't think that's a big deal, and neither did Puerto Ricans because they voted for Donald Trump in record numbers. Next, you said that he's going to unite the country, but isn't he a divisive political figure? Isn't he?
No, he's
talking about.
He's fighting for
anti-Trump-
representation. There's a difference between people who are trying to intentionally divide people and people who are trying to unite and say, welcome more. Let's be more understanding of different cultures and languages. Let's not treat Puerto Rico as a non-U.S. territory.
What I think-
Let's not throw paper towels at people who are barbarians that don't want the same relief that Americans get when our president.
I don't remember the paper towel.
Okay, well, it's 2017 and we just showed a picture of it, so it's true. Not just making it up.
I didn't say you were making it up.
President Trump threw paper towels at people that were in dire circumstances and thought that was a good idea. And it was disrespectful and condescending.
I just mean that I think when liberals say, oh, this is a uniting figure, but then that person has very political rhetoric, I think it's that what you think of as uniting is not what we think of as uniting.
Okay, fine. Let's just go off the strength that they said that he doesn't speak English. A lot of conservatives have been like, why are we having... He's not American. He actually is from Puerto Rico, so he is. And there's plenty of non-U.S. citizens that no conservative said a word about. I can go down the list. Coldplay. I can go down the list. Rolling Stones.
Oh, I like.
I didn't hear you guys when they were performing. I can go down the list. Paul McCartney.
I like Coldplay.
Everyone's allowed to perform that's not from the U.S.
Paul
besides
McCartney,
Bad Bunny.
I'm a little over.
Okay, keep
but
going.
I love Coldplay.
You too.
Yeah, they're great.
So why are we
hope
not
Coldplay
complaining
does it
about these
again.
non-American?
You know who I really hope wish
And the
would
big-
do it?
the gag is that-
Creed. I would love to see Creed perform the halftime show. They did a Thanksgiving Day, was it a Lions game, I think? A performance in like 2001. You can find it on YouTube. It's the greatest thing ever.
Okay,
the 90s, we should return.
We have to go
anyway.
to whom the people are calling for.
No, we should just...
Bad Bunny,
wherever.
the world is calling for. He's selling out arenas. He's in his prime of his career. We shouldn't go back to Robbie's hit list of the 90s.
Yes, we should. Counterpoint. Two more quick things. You said they're doing the profiling based solely on race. My understanding is, I could be wrong, is that the Supreme Court has cleared them to consider a number of factors. I don't think they can say, oh, you're just
I
Hispanic.
named it: location, job,
Right, it has to be
language,
all those things. You said solely because of one of the- I think it has to be all those things
we
together.
have a white person who migrated here from Ukraine that's also overstayed their visa, that speaks English and looks to be the tone of a white person. How can you say you're going off of the way they look? So you would say, oh, they just look like a American white person. They speak in English, so okay. So like somebody speaking Spanish, that you're targeting people that are
not solely-
Latino. I know, but those are 2 out of 5 things that they're looking for.
I don't know how many things out of 5 it has to be. Last point, I actually support the most pro-Puerto Rico policy we could possibly have, which would be a repeal of the Jones Act, which is a ridiculous 100-year-old policy that makes shipping more difficult. It's protectionism for U.S. ship manufacturers that makes it more difficult for shipping to stop in Puerto Rico and hurts their economy and makes everything more expensive. We should absolutely repeal that law. It would be great for the people of Puerto Rico. It'd be great for us as consumers in the U.S., and we should do that, and we won't do it because everybody loves protectionism, which is sad. But so lest anyone say I'm like anti-Puerto Rico or something, I'm not. I favor getting rid of a law that harms them in every which way.
But you just don't favor watching Bad Bunny on that Super Bowl stage.
Maybe I'll check. Maybe I'll listen.
You're going to enjoy it. We're going to have you dancing by the time it's over.
I plan to probably sit out the Super Bowl this year.
Lindsey, what are you seeing through your lens?
We are talking about Project 2025. So here's the thing about Donald Trump and Project 2025. He told the American people one thing on the campaign trail, and now he's doing the exact opposite in office. Flashback to the 2024 election. Trump was repeatedly asked about Project 2025, a 900-page conservative blueprint written by some of his closest allies. It outlined a sweeping agenda, slashing federal agencies, expanding executive power, banning abortion medication, gutting civil rights enforcement, deporting immigrants on a massive scale, and even politicizing the census. In short, it was a roadmap for remaking American life. But Trump wanted no part of it publicly. On stage in a debate with Kamala Harris, he insisted, quote, "I have nothing to do with Project 2025. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it. Purposely, I'm not going to read it." That was his line. And on June 5th, 2024, he doubled down even harder, writing on Truth Social, quote, "I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who is behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal." Fast forward a little over a year later, and the oxymoron is glaring. Yesterday, that same Truth Social account, Trump bragged, quote, "I have a meeting today with Russ Vought of Project 2025 fame to determine which of the many Democrat agencies, most of which are a political scam, he recommends be cut." That's not just a casual mention. Russ Vought isn't a random advisor. He helped build Project 2025 at the Heritage Foundation. He literally wrote parts of it. And now he's advising Trump in the middle of a government shutdown on which agencies to axe. So let's be clear. Trump went from saying he had no idea who was behind it to handing the pen to the architects. That's not strategy, that's fraud. He lied to the voters on the campaign trail, and he's hoping people won't notice now that he's in power. And what's at stake here isn't just political gamesmanship. If implemented, Project 2025 would disrupt nearly every part of American life: healthcare, education, retirement, security, civil rights, reproductive freedom. Harris put it plainly when she responded to Trump's gloating, quote, "This was always the plan. Project 2025 was always Trump's blueprint to seize unchecked power within the federal government and restrict Americans' freedoms. And he's implementing it right in front of our eyes." So here's my lens. Trump isn't just flirting with Project 2025 anymore. He's marrying it. And the honeymoon phase means slashing agencies, gutting rights, and reshaping government around his will. He told Americans he had, quote, "nothing to do with it." But today, Project 2025 is literally his agenda. And if you're not paying attention, that lie could cost you more than just trust in a politician. It could cost you your freedoms.
All right. Interesting stuff today, Lindsey.
Okay.
Obviously, the shutdown has...
Shutdown is going to be a bigger conversation. We're going to talk about
Absolutely.
this. Yeah.
Look, I think the tweet, or the Truth Social post, rather, where he says of Project 2025 fame is an obvious troll job to really bait Democrats into talking about Project 2025, which is exactly what's happened. And I would point out that he said on the campaign trail, "I like some of the things in it. I don't like some of the other things in it." And we saw precisely that this week with this Russ Vought memo regarding what they're going to do during the shutdown. That was something that Trump apparently liked. But then on the abortion medication, we actually saw the FDA in the aftermath of what they promised was going to be a review of the safety of mifepristone, actually approved a new generic version of that drug for public consumption. So that was apparently something that Trump didn't like in Project 2025. So it seems to me perfectly consistent with what he said on the campaign trail.
Well, I think saying "I haven't read it," he doesn't know the architects. He knew them well. I mean, some of them have positions in the administration. And I think when you talk about the idea that overall what people were most alarmed about Project 2025 was the consolidation of a lot of the power to the president. And we've seen that multiple times in the last 9 months. He's tried to skip over Congress or made something an executive order or, move forward in ways that, to me, based on American history, are not the most presidential of strategies. That's why we have 3 branches of government. I think that people should be alarmed with the amount that he insisted. He hadn't even read the thing or known the architects, but he knew them very well. And so it's just like nobody wants a liar to be their president. And that is just a lie. It doesn't matter if you liked a little bit of it, you liked a lot of it. How do you know about it if you haven't read it? What parts do you not like? That's all I'm saying, like the integrity of it all. To blatantly pretend when every journalist pretty much understood what was there. All the Democrats understood what was there. And I agree with Robbie. Everyone made it like this boogeyman. Oh my God, it's really conservative policy that's explained in way too many pages. But then there's so much more in there that's overextending in ways that traditional conservatives maybe didn't. And so I think that it just needs to be acknowledged that that was on your agenda when you're campaigning so people would know what they're getting, because you're kind of distancing yourself from it, but you haven't read it, but now we know you read it and these are some of your friends. And so it's like, what's the plan here?
Based on people that I spoke to close to the campaign and on the campaign during the election, his frustration actually with the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 was real, and it was not something that he was interested in becoming his platform. Obviously, there's going to be things that he agrees with because, as you mentioned, a lot of it is sort of standard bearer conservative policy. But at the time, I think it was actually sincere that he did not want this to be his campaign promises because it wasn't entirely consistent with what he was running on. Abortion, again, is a perfect example of that. He is much more moderate on abortion than anything in Project 2025. And there was actually, he was toying with the idea of not hiring anyone for his admin from the Heritage Foundation because he was frustrated with them for trying to make it out like this was Trump's plan when he had no hand in creating it. So naturally, the conservative movement in DC is fairly small. People who wrote forwards for books or wrote policy portions of Project 2025 were sort of inevitably going to end up in the administration. But I can tell you that I think it, not permanently, but did a lot of long-term damage to Trump's relationship with the Heritage Foundation. And we saw him have a much closer relationship with America First Policy Institute because of it.
So I want to go back to something that you said earlier. You mentioned that President Trump might be doing this to try to egg on Democrats to join the conversation.
That's exactly what he's doing.
Right. So I hadn't even thought about that. So that's a great point to bring up. And if they're falling into that, so what are the next steps? Because I know this was like such a boogeyman that if the American public, the same people you're trying to save healthcare for, according to Democrats, are seeing that Project 2025 boogeyman is coming back in full effect with the architect now making decisions, which one is scarier, losing healthcare or losing all your freedoms, according to what people were saying about Project 2025? What is the next step? So now you brought it back up and you made everybody alarmed and aware of it. And now they're going to just drop the whole healthcare argument because of the fact that you're bringing in the Project 2025 architect?
Well, for the first time in any modern political history, really, Republicans are on offense in this shutdown. Chuck Schumer did not shut down the government because he cared about healthcare. He shut down the government because he's facing a primary challenge from AOC. And he's nervous that Democrats are turning on him. And so he felt like he had to, quote unquote, do something. And Democrats walked right into a trap because not only were Republicans prepared to lay off thousands of federal workers, shut down some of these agencies under Project 2025, but the Democrats also apparently didn't realize that when they were calling for going back to the pre-CR spending before the spring deal that they made, that included health care for illegal aliens and funding for transgender surgery. So when they said, well, we're focusing on health care, they did that because pollsters told them that that was a popular issue. They didn't think about the fact that they had also taken healthcare positions that were wildly unpopular with the American people.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see happen is this kind, and we're talking about this in the next segment, so I don't want to go too far into it, but I think what we're going to see happen is Chuck Schumer really is, and I would agree with you there, he has a position to defend, and he knows that the Democrats are in a position where after losing the election in both Congress houses, you're kind of like, what is the party standing for? And if you know healthcare is a winning issue, maybe to resurface that energy around Obamacare for Democrats and get people excited about something again is better than nothing.